Sage and Nathan here with Sounds Good Stereo. What are you doing, Nathan?
Just hanging out.
Okay. All right, guys, we're gonna go ahead and we have this 2022 Ford F-150 Platinum, and we're gonna show you guys how to install our stealth system, basically the enclosure and the amp rack that fits behind this chair. We're gonna start from flipping the seat down, removing all the factory gear, and prepping it for the installation of the new gear and the complete installation of all the gear. So let's get going. Alright, so first things first, got the seats. The passenger side has a pull latch that'll flip down. You have your floor jack down here, which we're going to remove. I'm going to walk around this truck, go over to this side. Okay, so we're in this truck. It's a 2022, 2021, 2022 F-150 Platinum, where you guys can see it's a Platinum. All of them are pretty much the same. You have the power inverter station underneath the seat. There's a flip-up bin. All this stuff underneath here stays in the vehicle. You do not have to remove any of this stuff. Floor mat, everything. So you can have this all full of all your goodies, and this can actually stay like that. So let me flip this chair back down. I need you to hold the camera, Nathan. I can't do this. Okay, so right, seat flips up, so you can reach back. I can't put a camera there, but basically reach back and you release this little nub thing right here, and that releases it from the release, the latch. It all comes down, so this will fold down. So you fold this one down. The passenger side, you can literally just, there's a little release on the side of the seat. You pull it down. So you have this stuff flipped down. Okay, first things first, we got to remove factory amplifier, factory subwoofer. We're going to remove the jack. We're also going to remove these rear pillars, both left and right rears, and you have to unbolt these from the seats. So we're going to basically go through all those steps real quick with you, or real slow with you, and go ahead and get this prepped for the next part. Okay, so we got the seats flipped down, and now we're going to start on basically the first step in getting all this stuff out. The first thing what I do is remove these seat belts from the side of the chair, which is a 13 millimeter bolt. We're going to use an impact gun. You can use a ratchet or whatever. We're going to just throw that here. So these have retainer clips on them, so that will stay. You can go ahead and just place that there. So, and then we're going to move to the next side. There's a 13 millimeter on both sides. All right. So now we got those disconnected. Now I would go on the other side, Nathan. All right. So now we got these seat belts detached. The reason why we took the seat belts from the side of the chair is we're going to remove these trim pieces on both driver and passenger side. But first I'm going to go ahead and unplug this and get this amplifier set aside, because we're not going to be using this anymore, and then we'll move along and get the subwoofer pulled out and set aside, and then we'll work on getting the jack out. So we'll get all this removed. So it's going to require a couple different tools. First, some of the trucks have a T25 Torx holding this, and some of them actually have a 7mm. This particular one has a T25. I have a T25 on a grill. I'm going to go ahead and remove those and set those aside. None of the hardware that we're removing from this equipment is going to be reused in the new installation. Everything is supplied again for you.
Some will be used to go back in factory holes.
Okay, yeah, that's true. Actually, so you will put some of the hardware back into empty holes once we're done with the installation. Thanks for correcting me. All right, so I just took those out. Actually, let's go ahead and get the harnesses. This is a truck with a B&O system, so there's actually 3 plugs. There's a black plug, a brown plug, and then your A to B cable, which is basically a USB style cable. So you get those unplugged, and then you can actually remove. We send you guys this removal tool. This removal tool is great. You can get up underneath these clips and you can remove them from the amplifier rack. Has a lot of leverage. So now you got this disconnected, set it there, and then the next thing we took out these T25s, and now there's 2 10mm down here on the floor. So we'll grab a 10mm socket and remove those 2 10mm, set those aside, and now we can pull the amplifier out of the vehicle and set it aside. All right, great. So we got that out. Now we have to go ahead and get the subwoofer out. So on the racetrack, we call it the racetrack subwoofer. It's the big oval infinite baffle sub. There is a harness attached over here. You guys can see right down here. Again, with your pry tool, we can go ahead and get up underneath there and go ahead and unhook that and go ahead and unplug the subwoofer. Now at the bottom, actually let's go ahead and do the top first. We have 3 13mm bolts holding this in. The first one here, take that out, set it aside. We got a 13mm nut on the driver's side, and then another 13mm nut on the passenger side. Thank you, Nathan. All right, now we got those 3 bolts out. Now we can just basically lift this up out of the way and set this aside. You can see when we remove this from the vehicle, there's actually a hole to the outside of the vehicle. In your kit, you're going to have a plate to install here, and we're going to show you how to do that. You definitely want to cover this up. So, all right. So now we have.
Want to swap?
I want to get these. So we removed the factory subwoofer from these studs. There's 2 studs on the floor, and then there's a bolt that bolts into a thread on the back wall. These studs in the floor are actually, again, they're 10mm, so you can actually remove those. You can remove these. These are 10mm, but then they have a M8 stud that comes up to use a bolt to mount it. So we can go ahead and remove those from the floor because we're not going to be using these. So now we have all the hardware out for that, and now we'll go ahead and move over and take the jack out, which is going to be a 13mm again. you have to undo the jack. I think they should make this thing longer. Unscrew, unscrew, unscrew. Alright, so get that undone. We're gonna set this on the floor over here. And now you have the bracket for the jack, 3 13mm bolts. These are nice because they have blue Loctite on them, so if you have a ratchet, it'll take a minute to get them out. So we can set this aside. We're not going to be using this anymore. But your 3 bolts, we're going to go ahead and put them back in the floor. All right, great. So now everything is all the electronics is removed, and now we can go ahead and get these pillars out. So what I like to do is from the top here, grab onto the panel, and if you pull gently but with some force, this panel will unclip from the car. So now we're going to talk about this retainer clip, which Nathan, you're going to have to get over here for this. So we have to remove this retainer clip from this panel. You guys can see it doesn't pull out. The way it works is you turn it, and then it'll slide through the hole. It's keyed, and then you turn it again and it comes out. So it's to go in, you turn it, push it, turn it, it comes out. So super simple. You don't have to cut it, it comes right out. So there you go, that's out. All right, so that came out. We got that clip off. Now we're gonna go ahead and feed the seat belt through. Just be careful, slide it through here very nicely so you don't scratch your panel. You can go ahead and let that hang behind. Now you gotta release this from the floor. And go ahead and get that. It's all released. And very carefully, you can gently pull this panel out. So that's it, that comes right out. And then you basically repeat the same process for the other side, minus removing the air duct vent if your truck is equipped with that, which we'll show you right now. All right, so on this side, you do have this cooling vent. I guess there's a fan built into the power inverter box underneath the seat. This vent basically just comes off very carefully. It has some like push clips into the plastic. You can just pop it out. It comes right out, super simple. Set that to the side. And then we're gonna repeat the same process for this side. I start up here, pull on it, just comes right out. You have to remove the sill plate. Doesn't really require any pry tools to remove. You can just kind of pull on it and it comes out. Super simple. All right, so got all that loose. Pull this. you want to not do what I just did, go ahead and pull this through before pulling the panel out. There you go. This one's a little more difficult to get out for some reason. I'm going to show you why. Let's check this out. So from factory, they put this little alignment pin here for alignment to line up the clips. Little secret of ours is we actually remove these pins, and then you'll actually be able to slide it back into the vehicle without removing the seat. And these will just line up. Just pay attention, it'll line up and it'll clip right in. Nathan pointed out something too. These top clips, these top gold clips, sometimes when you remove them, this gold clip will stay in the vehicle. The plastic will pull out of the clip. With the pry tool that we supply with you, with the kit, you can easily get on each side of that clip and pop it right out. Okay, so we got all the gear out. We got the 2 rear trim panels out. Seat belts released, obviously. Next step is we're going to go ahead and remove the rear carpet panel, and we're going to go ahead and set that aside, and then we'll go ahead and show you what bolts to put back in place, how to install the block off plate down here to cover that, and remove the 10mm from the latch, which is where part of the amp rack is going to mount. So let's go ahead and get a pry tool. So this carpet panel is basically held on by 2 push clips, and those push clips are here. You can get your pry tool underneath and go ahead and pull that out. Nathan's going to do that side for us, and it'll go flying into the abyss. Well, there it is, I got it. So we got those 2 super long push clips. We'll go ahead and set those aside, and now we can go ahead and carefully remove. This panel will literally just come right out of the vehicle. We'll go ahead and pull it out. Seat belt out of our way. I'm going to go ahead and set it up. This truck has a bed cover. This is carpet. We can just set it up here. It's not going to scratch it. It'll be fine. So now we have this whole area completely basically stripped down. We have our raw metal. We do recommend sound treating this back wall, which we're going to do. And we're going to also go ahead and get some of these pieces out of our way. We also have our harnessing that we're going to be using. Our system will plug into this plug and this plug. This plug will not be used, so we'll set that aside for now. But next part of the process is we're going to go ahead and sound treat this back wall, and then we're going to go ahead and install our block off plate. Okay, so the next part is we're going to unbolt the window regulator and this module from the rear, and we're going to use 2 of the tie wraps you guys get in the power wire attachment bag or so. So first thing we're going to do, these are 8mm. I'm going to take those out, set those aside. 10mm. Basically get that out of the way. I like to use some of these tie wraps, and you can tie wrap this up out of the way on these, I guess these are baby seat latches or something. I think that's what they are. You can just string these through and get these out of the way. Around here first, then hook it over here and get this up out of the way. So we can get these out of the way, you want to have this out of the way so you don't smash these connectors plugged into this module. You want to get all this clear so when the enclosure goes in here, it's plenty of space. And also, now that we have it all pulled out, now we have room to add our sound treatment across the back wall. So most of the kits come with at least 5 boxes of sound treatment. So one of those boxes you can set aside and sound treat this back wall. So you'll sound treat the whole back wall. Obviously, do not cover these vents. You're going to want to cut the sound treatment around these vents on both sides, driver and passenger side. You can go ahead and cover over this hole with the sound treatment, but then we will go ahead and trim that back out and install our block off plate. So that's what we're going to do next. Okay, so now we're going to sound treat the back wall. We have one of the boxes of sound treatment laid out here on the floor, and the measurements for the back wall are 63 by 14.5. So we have this start over here at 1. We're coming all the way over to 63 inches, which is right here. Nathan's going to go ahead and put a score line on it and go ahead and cut it with some scissors. You can cut it with a razor blade as long as you put something underneath it, like a piece of wood or something. So now you have some extra left over, and then we're going to go at 14 and a half. Do some marks.
And then, what is it?
All right.
3. And 13.25. 4. And 9.25.
Basically measuring over from this edge 3 inches.
3 inches.
13.25, and then 4 and 9.25. That makes your square. So this is the arts and crafts portion of the project. You can also just cut this piece, these dimensions, and then you can place it on there and then cut around the vents once they're in the vehicle. Cool is once you get one of these cut out, you can just place it on the other side and use it as a stencil. One side cut out. Or you can be like Nathan and fold it in half. There you go. Nathan, how many times have you done this?
A few.
Let's set those aside. And now we have our piece. And it's definitely easier to put this in with 2 people, but you can put it in by yourself if you want to. We'll let Nathan put it in by himself.
Okay.
While I hold the camera. Got all the paper removed because he's gonna slide it. I'll give you a hand. You can slide it across the back of the seat. Basically how we measured was right here to this edge.
Did you go up here or down here?
Up.
Up there.
Yep. Right there. You can also do this in sections as well. It doesn't have to be one continuous piece. Sometimes it is easier to break it down into sections. I like to just kind of pre-cut it and get it to fit around everything. And once you get it like that, go ahead and get a roller and start rolling it out.
Let's get down to business. Give you one more night to get.
Alright, so we got all the sound treatment rolled out on the back wall. Now Nathan's gonna go ahead and cut out the hole that we have, which is the factory subwoofer hole. It's what's called an infinite baffle subwoofer. It uses the outside world as the enclosure, basically. So just go ahead and remove that. This sound treatment has a foam layer on it, so it's going to also create a gasket for our plate that we mount in here. The factory uses plastic to make these vents, so we use plastic to make our plate that blocks off there. So alright, so now we have our block off plate that goes and covers the hole. You guys can see it's made out of HDPE. It has our 1087 design logo milled into it, and it also actually comes with a gasket on it already, but now we're going to have double gaskets. It's for people that don't sound treat the back wall. It has a gasket on it, so this is going to go ahead and make sure the logo is right, looking into the cab, right? So yeah, that fits right in there, and then you'll take your 1/8 inch drill bit and your drill and go ahead and drill you don't have to push on the drill a lot. You just let the drill do the work. Pretty simple to drill into there. And now, once the holes are drilled, you'll put in the 4 or the 6 screws, the same screws that we use to do our block-off plates, and to screw in the door speakers. It's the universal. Alright, so that's installed nice and flush. That's covered off. So now our whole back wall is sound treated, our block off plates installed, and the next thing we're going to do is get the power wire in and get that ran over to where the amplifier is going to go. Nathan. Grommets. Okay. Now, we got all that done. Now we're going to talk about power wire. Where to run the power wire into the truck for this system, and what hole size you need to drill. So in this particular system, this is a Evo 9-channel system that we're putting in, Evo 9-channel stealth system. This kit comes with a 4-gauge full-length kit. There's also different kits that come with different wire gauges. We have 3 that we offer, and depending on your kit, you'll get one of these 3. This kit is taking which is a PG11, there's a PG7, and a PG21. So these are the 3 grommets that we have. The PG7, which is for an 8-gauge kit, comes in the 8-gauge kit, 2 of these, and you have to drill a 1/2-inch hole. The PG11, for 4-gauge, you drill a 3/4-inch hole. And the PG21 that comes with the 0-gauge kit, you have to drill a 1 1/8-inch hole. So we recommend, for the PG7, which is for 8-gauge, and the PG11, which is for 4-gauge, we recommend using a step bit. This bit goes from 1/4 inch all the way up to 3/4 inch. So in this particular truck, we're going to drill all the way 3/4 inch. We're going to go all the way through with this bit. If you're drilling a hole for the 8 gauge, you would go halfway. It's actually, it says it on the bit, 1/2 inch, so you drill a 1/2 inch hole. When going with the PG21 for 0 gauge, you're going to use, this is our shop's hole saw. It's been through a lot, you guys can see. It's not brand new and shiny. So this is a 1 1/8 inch hole saw, and that's what we use to drill the 2 holes for the PG21s for the 0 gauge. So don't just, if you're getting a kit, don't drill a 1 1/8 hole if you're doing the 1/2 inch, because then it won't work. So wait till you get your kit, find out what your kit comes with before drilling any holes in the vehicle. So now Nathan's going to get our step bit, which we're going to drill a 3/4 inch hole for our PG11, which is for 4 gauge, and we're going to go ahead and drill that in the vehicle. So this panel, which is the trim panel here, and then there's the rear panel back here. There's a floor section. You guys can see, like, there's kind of a line right here where the panel goes. So if you flip this carpet up, there's a flat spot right here. There's a flat spot. This is where the 2 holes get drilled in the vehicle. And Nathan's going to show you how that's done. Another thing too that I would recommend doing before drilling the holes is to go ahead and lift up on this and get this kind of out of your way, because you don't want the chuck of the drill to burn through or damage this rubber seal. So I would get this up and out of the way, so that's out of your way, and then you can just hold the carpet up. And I'll go ahead and let Nathan show you guys how to do this. There's one hole. Alright, so we got the 2 holes drilled. Now we're going to want to get a vacuum. If you don't have a vacuum, you guys can use some tape to get all those shavings out. We'll use a shop vac and get this cleaned up. Another thing too, when doing this, you guys can take these, basically the nut off of the gland, and you're going to want to make sure, like in this case, Nathan's experienced, he's done this quite a bit, but you might want to just lay out with your, especially with the PG21 for 0 gauge, you want to lay out and mark your spacing here to make sure these are going to fit side by side before you drill the holes. It's easier with the 8 gauge and 4 gauge. I mean, they're a lot smaller, so these will fit next to each other, but with the PG21 you don't have a lot of space, so you want to make sure you pay attention to that. Alright, so hold on, let's show them how to do this. So these grommets have a nut and there's a gasket, so the long side goes toward the outside of the vehicle. You don't want this, it doesn't go into the vehicle like this, it doesn't go in like that, it actually goes in from the other side. So Nathan, you can literally just reach around. You can reach around and get it started. As you guys can see, that one's in there. You'll go ahead and get the other one in. These are watertight grommets. They have seals on both sides, so they seal not to let any water into the vehicle. Alright, so we have the wire ran back already from this particular one. They come with extra Tech Flex, past. The reason for that is because so you can fish this through the gland. And Nathan will basically run it through there. And then he can go ahead and get it pushed through. Right, like that. I'll actually give him a hand and just start feeding it up. Just tell me when to stop.
Keep going.
Alright, so that's good. We got that one done. And go ahead and do the next one. Same process. Is that it?
Hang on. Alright.
Done?
Alright, yeah.
Okay. See these power wires, one has just black and the other one's black with a red stripe on it. So this is your power, this is your ground. Okay, so we got the power wires through the glands. They're all secure. Now we got the power wire. Now we're going to basically take this power wire and we're going to route it down through here, up, and we're going to run it across these harnessing and cables across the top above where the enclosure and the amp rack fit. So that's going to run across, all the way across the top and then down to the amplifier. So we have the power and ground from the front, and we also, in this particular system, this is an Evo 9 channel, so it's a three-way system. So there's two wires that run to the passenger pillar, and these also need to be ran with this power wire up and across the top to the amplifier rack. So we're going to go ahead and do that now. Okay, so we're going to run the wire. Nathan's putting it behind. There's a little plastic retainer. Go ahead and pull that through. There's a drain tube that comes from the sunroof. Go ahead and run it behind that. Don't pull the drain tube out of the floor.
It's not fun to get back in.
I guess you have some experience with that. That's where the water builds up in the sunroof and drains out of the vehicle, so you definitely don't want to pull that out of the floor. So we got the power, and now he has the speaker wires. Running those one at a time. Going to run those again behind the drain tube without pulling it out of the floor. Those wires ran up with those harnesses and then tie wrapped in place. Basically can go to this next hanger spot. I'm going to go ahead and tie wrap this in the middle to the window regulator cables. And then we'll do one more right here. And you want to tie wrap this kind of behind here. You're not going to want to tie wrap it in front because the amp rack does sit in this area right here. So you'll go ahead and tie wrap this right here. Tie wrap it over here. Try to get that behind. There you go. Alright, so we got all this basically up and out of our way. Remember, there's an enclosure going to go in here on this side, and the amp rack, it'll end up going behind the amp rack here. And then we have plenty of cable to reach the distribution blocks. Okay, so we got the wiring draped over, a couple tie wraps to get it up and over. You know, we got these things tie wrapped out of the place. Tie wrapped out of the way. All right, so we got these tie wrapped out of the way, and now we have, last thing before we fit the enclosure in here is we removed all the factory gear, and there's some holes, some threaded holes left in the vehicle. For this stealth kit, you're going to only use this one thread that's all the way closest to the driver's side of the vehicle. You're going to be bolting the amp rack into this hole and to the 10mm that's in the seat latch. So we have some little closed cell foam circles. We're going to go ahead and cover this one here, this one, and this one over here by the seat bracket. So you can just peel the paper off the back of these, and there's adhesive on it. You can just go ahead and stick those over and seal those holes up. And last one be here. All right, perfect. So we're going to have this hole left and this hole once we get that. So next part is we're going to go ahead and get the enclosure fitted. So once the enclosure sits in here, then we can unbolt the window regulator and the communications box or module or whatever it is, and we can bolt those back in place, and then we'll move on to the next step. Okay, so we're going to get the box in. Move this seat belt out of the way.
One thing,
We need a light.
yep,
It's right here.
there's the light.
All right, so we're gonna get the enclosure in now. You guys can see
This spring right here is going to be our alignment. And I'll show you.
the alignment spring.
Yes. There's a piece on the enclosure that's going to go right here, pretty much, and butt right up against it. And that's to protect the woofer from this scary bolt right here.
Yeah, unfortunately, there's a scary bolt sticking out of the floor of these trucks that we cannot remove.
And the woofers sit right here and right here.
So yeah, this little area right here is where they downfire, and we don't want them to, well, that bolt to go through the woofers. So basically you put the passenger side down in first and then butt it up against that spring, and then you can set it down slowly into place. This is definitely a project you probably want to have a helper. You can do it by yourself. Nathan does it by himself all the time. So that's basically it.
This part right here, the light. This part right here is where
The enclosure hits that, right, Nathan?
Yep.
Okay.
it's supposed to be right up against that part right there.
Yep. And
Thank
that's
you,
it.
Charlie.
You guys can see that all these wires are now behind the enclosure and up over the top of the enclosure.
So we'll put some more zip ties here
Go ahead and get
and get these
these
back in
modules
place.
back in place, and the enclosure just basically sits in here, and then we'll cut the carpet around it. So let's go ahead and get these bolted back in place. All right, so now Nathan's gonna go ahead and reinstall this clip right here. We'll get that in place. There's an alignment pin on that one.
Right there.
It just aligns right in there. These are 8mm bolts. Perfect. So that's in place. And now the next piece will be a 10mm.
And these wires will just sit on top of the enclosure like that.
And that's it. So everything is bolted back in place. There are some extra tie wraps. You guys can get all this stuff secured in here. We'll probably add a couple more tie wraps along here. Get all this stuff nice and secure. Yeah, enclosure's in. One thing is there's a wire coming out of the back of the enclosure. So you want to make sure that's coming out of the back of the enclosure, because that's going to plug into your amp rack. Okay, so now we got the enclosure placed, and now we're going to go ahead and cut the carpet panel to fit back into the vehicle before we move to the next step. So this is the passenger side, this is the driver's side. Remember, we took out these push pins on each side. Well, we measure over from the center of that push pin over 6.5 inches to the passenger side of the vehicle is where the carpet gets cut, and then 2 inches from the center of this one toward the passenger side of the vehicle it gets cut. So there's going to be 1, 2, 3 cuts made to this panel. So what we're going to do is we're going to measure over 6.5 inches. You don't have to be exactly perfect, but basically place your tape measure in the middle of that hole. Then you're going to draw an imaginary line down. So this is about 6.5 inches from the center of that hole, which is right here. So you're basically going to take your blade and you're going to start it without cutting your finger off, is you're going to basically cut this straight down. You can use a straight edge, and you don't have to go through all at once. You can do it in a couple passes. So we're going to start and we're going to cut this just like that. So the bottom of this lip down to the floor. And then we're going to come over here. We're going to do the same exercise. So 2 inches is in the middle of the hole. So we're going to come down, and that's basically right here at this indentation. So we're going to take our blade and we're going to start here, and we're going to basically just cut down, straight down. That wasn't very straight, but it's good. All right, so we got those two things cut. Now we're going to go ahead and underneath this lip, basically follow and cut around from this cut. So we'll start here, we'll put our blade through, and I just make short passes. You don't have to go through the material all at once. You can cut it a couple times. And then we'll come here, we'll cut around here, cut up underneath, and go across to our other cut. And again, we can come back in and cut the foam with a couple passes. We supply 2 blades in the kit, in our tool kit that we have. One you can use for sound treatment, but the other one I would leave brand new and sharp for cutting this foam. Or if you're using your own blade, you want to make sure you have a brand new fresh blade in it. Makes it a lot easier to cut through this foam on the back wall. So now we have this piece removed, and we can get this panel in the truck. That's basically it. Now we have this big notch cut out of the panel, and we can go ahead and get this placed back in. Once we get this placed back in, we can go ahead and start working on the next step. Alright, so we got this panel from the bench. You saw we cut out this shape into it. Now we got it in place. Now you actually have to make a couple more incisions to this to get everything to fit perfectly. You can see this doesn't, we need this to push back. So we're actually gonna take our blade and we're gonna cut up a little bit here. We're gonna cut up a little bit here to get this to move around the enclosure. We can get this all tucked up underneath and get that back in there. We can get this a lot farther back around the enclosure. I like to not cut it exactly out of the enclosure. I like to kind of force fit it around and get this nice and snug on the enclosure, because basically what this panel is for is it's an acoustical panel, so it basically stops a lot of road noise from the back here. So we don't want to cut the whole thing out or just not put it in here. So we want to get our rough shape and then do some small incisions in it to get it to fit how we want. So we want this corner to fit back up in, and then what we're also going to do too is we're going to cut a slit right here, basically continue that slit line that we had, and we're going to cut that out right there. The reason for this is we're actually going to pull your kneeing on it. We're going to go ahead and take this tie wrap loose that we have. We're going to pull these wires out and we're going to run them out here. Get all this stuff. We also have our subwoofer wire. We're going to basically get all those there and go ahead and get this put back in place, up over, bam, bam, bam. Get all this pushed back in. Get this pushed all back up in here, kind of get that like that. These wires. So now we have our passenger side speaker wires that we're running to our A-pillar, power, ground, and our subwoofer wire. So now we can, now the amp rack should fit in here no problem. That's that. Okay, so this gets removed. You can see it's already out actually. This 10 millimeter, it's hooked. It's hooks in here, and then this 10 millimeter goes in, but when you unbolt it, it all comes out. So it's basically all one. So you got to remove this clip from here. So there's a couple ways to do it. You can get a pair of pliers and get up underneath it and just basically squeeze it and break it off, which I'll go ahead and do. See that? Actually, the pry tool. A lot of times you can use this pry tool to get up underneath it and get it up out of the way. Another thing you can do is you can put this on the floor and you can hit that out with a hammer. It'll come right out that way. So you can just put it down and you can hit it with a hammer and get that bolt out just like that. And then it'll go back in, no problem. Okay, so we got these, you guys, we got this, some slits cut in here. We got this to fit. We cut a slit for these wiring, or this wiring, this wiring. We got a slit cut for this wiring. We removed the plastic mounting clips off of this harness. This will actually run back out of the factory spot. We just got rid of the plastic clips off of it. And now we're going to actually, we have to do another thing here. We're going to get this panel just like pulled away. The wires that are running out of the slit are we're running our power, ground, and our subwoofer wire. Those are going to come out of the carpet slit here. These are actually going to get attached across with a couple tie wraps that we have. I don't know why this is underneath or below. So we're going to attach this along. This is the actual window regulator cable. We can just put a couple tie wraps across here. Put two across here. Get this out of our way. And we're gonna loop this around here, get this back. We're gonna go ahead and put a tie wrap here. And cool, so we got that. These are gonna run down with your factory wiring. So, and then we find a cutter right there. You can just cut these. Set those aside. All right, cool. So now we have this here. We can go ahead and get, lost it, our sub wire, our power wires. Gonna get those through there. Gonna get our factory wiring, get this foam pushed back around, up and over. These go up and over these. It gets clipped back in. This is cut. This pushes back. Now this pushes back all the way back with ease. And now we can put our plastic clip
on the toolbox.
I have to go get the plastic clip. So now we got all this routed. We got our power and ground and there. We can go ahead and get this situated and push this clip back in. Make sure all this stuff is lined up. Perfect.
I'll go ahead and put this side in.
Cool. So we got all this situated now. Now we can, the next thing we're going to do is we need to go ahead and prep these pieces to go into the distribution block. So power and ground. At this point, this wire should not be hooked up to the battery underneath the hood. So you have ran it front to back in place, but do not hook this up to the battery yet. because you don't want to deal with live wiring. All right, so we need to, now we're going to, we have these pre-Tech Flex wires that you ran front to back. Now we need to go ahead and hook these up to the distribution blocks that are on the back of the amp rack. So you have these wires coming out. We have the amp rack set on the back of the seat. You basically don't want to set it on top of these modules or anything. It's a nice soft part of the seat. We have the amp rack just sitting here. So basically they'll come out of your slit, run here, and then they're going to make a turn and go into the distro block. So the first one, are in the kit, normally your ground wire is going to end up being slightly shorter than your power, just because of the fuse holder and the way everything fits in the vehicle. But first we'll start with this. We're basically going to take a cutter, go ahead and cut that off, and then basically what we do is we pull this, you're going to pull this back ever so slightly. The Tech Flex will slide back on your wire, and then you're going to take some electrical tape and go ahead and wrap it around, leaving about a 1/2 inch of wire exposed. And then you'll take and you'll simply go through the jacket of the wire very carefully and go ahead and remove the jacketing. You can go ahead and twist this wire up, and then you'll have 2 pieces of heat shrink that are supplied. You got to get it open. Sometimes it's difficult. You get it open, and you can go ahead and slide that heat shrink over. Slide the heat shrink over. So what we do is, you don't put it back here. You kind of leave the heat shrink overhanging about, I would say about a 3/16, about an 1/8 of an inch or so. And then you can grab a lighter or any type of flame source, heat gun, lighter, torch, whatever you have. If you don't have anything to do the heat shrink, you can technically just use electrical tape. It's gonna be fine. I use just a normal, we're gonna use a normal lighter in this particular situation. Kind of just get the heat shrink nice and warm, and it's going to shrink up. You'll start seeing the pattern of the Tech Flex through the heat shrink, and you guys can see the heat shrink went over and it's touching the copper strands, and that's on there real good. And then you can pop these covers off. Close this so I don't cut my hand off. You can get that cover, it snaps on both sides. And then you'll take your Allen key. We have this huge T-handle Allen key. There's other ones available. And then basically you're going to go ahead and get these very carefully, get those wires pushed in. You don't want to fray it and it pushes out. You want to get all those strands into the hole. Push it all the way back and go ahead and tighten your Allen key, or tighten your Allen bolt. It doesn't have to be super tight. You don't want to over tighten it to break this off, but get it nice and snug. Make sure the wire doesn't pull out, and then we can take our red striped wire, which is our power, and we're going to just kind of run it along with it, kind of just loop it over nicely. Remember, the wire goes, I'll go ahead and pull this off now. The wire ends at the back of this connector, so basically mark with your hand, that's where it's going to basically end up. So we'll mark there. We'll go ahead and cut this off, get that cut off, set that aside. Again, we'll pull this back about a 1/2 inch or so, maybe a little bit more. Take some electrical tape and wrap it around. Simple. Go ahead and strip the wire again. You just want to get through. You can also use this is technically a razor blade, this tool that we're using here. It's really cool, but you just get that jacketing off. You can use a razor blade and go around and just cut through the jacketing. Same thing again. We're going to go ahead and put our heat shrink over, slide it down, and again we're going to let it overhang about 1/8 of an inch. And take your heat and go ahead and get this nice and hot. You can flip it over. With a lighter, it adds usually some black soot to the heat shrink, but it's fine. You still know it's power. So you guys can see that it's shrunk down to the wire. And then again, we'll just loosen our Allen up and very carefully. See, we're crazy. We're doing this live. Don't have it hooked up to the battery, please. This one's actually hooked up to the battery. So we'll go ahead and tighten this down nice and tight. We got these 2 connections done. They're tight. They're not going to pull out of there. And we can go ahead and put our cover caps back on. We want to make sure these are clipped in tight. They don't come off. There's usually some protective film. I like to remove those, or you can leave them on, it doesn't really matter. I take them off. Just little protective plastic things on the distro block. So those are connected, and now we have another wire here that's coming from our enclosure. Remember, we ran it through that slit. You're going to have this black and white wires going to the opposite connector, and that goes ahead and just plugs in. So that's your subwoofer. So now the subwoofer is hooked up to the amp rack, and power and ground's hooked up to the amp rack. Okay, so now we got this sitting here. We have a bunch of different connections on this truck. This one is an unleashed system, so you'll have this black rectangle plug, you'll have a gray connector, big gray connector. This is actually the factory B&O plug. You'll have a base knob that's tie wrapped up. You'll have 2 USBs that are tie wrapped up, and then you'll have 4 more connectors with labels on them. So first I'm going to go ahead and undo this tie wrap and go ahead and extend these out. You gotta kind of make sure you're gonna want to get these wires underneath this. Same with the base knob. You can go ahead and undo the base knob wire. Go ahead and pull it back a little bit. I normally will just set it on the floor of the vehicle and get that down. So now need the bolts. Okay, so now we have our wires, our base knob, and our USBs untie wrapped. We have all these wires here. We have the factory cabling. We have our passenger side pillar wires and our factory connectors. We have those here. We have all this. So now what we're going to do is we have 2 different things. We have a factory 10mm bolt that we took out of the top, and then we have a supplied spacer and a 13mm bolt that goes down into the floor. So this is what's going to mount this amp rack in the vehicle. So we're going to just set those here out of our way. So what we're doing here is all these connectors right here, there's actually a bracket down here. I don't know if you guys can catch that. I'll get a light so I can show you. There's a bracket down here, right here. All these wires are going to run on the back side of this bracket. These wires are basically going to just end up behind the amp rack, so they're going to kind of loop down and loop around and kind of be draped down behind here. The reason for this is so you can for one, connect it, and then if you need to, you could pull this rack out for service or anything that you need to do. So basically now we're going to go ahead and very carefully, we're going to set this down. You're going to want to make sure those wires are behind, and then you can get all this looped back down and around. You guys can see these kind of just loop back down in there, and then this is gonna go in between. This is gonna fit in between this board, and then you do have a bolt that goes down here. This is a little tricky. You're gonna see down in there, Nathan. So you need to, you're gonna wanna get this, I don't know if you can see, this is probably one of the more difficult things to do, is to get this bottom bolt. You can kind of get that spacer lined up with the hole, and take your bolt and very carefully go ahead and get this started. Pull it in and out a couple times. You can go ahead and get this started by hand. Should be able to just use your hands, your fingers, and just thread that into the floor, and that secures the bottom. You don't have to tighten it all the way yet, but you would just want to make sure it's aligned. So now we have all these wires coming to the side right here. We're actually going to pull up. We have a couple things to connect right here on this factory side here. We got, this is going to end up going right back in here. We're going to actually, in these trucks, this is a newer truck, you see that? Thanks, Nathan. So we have the brown connector, we have the blue USB, and then we have this other black connector. This black connector is not used. This is actually power and everything for the factory. I guess it's not all power, but it's some power stuff and other wires for the factory amplifier. This doesn't get used. We're only going to be using the brown connector and the blue connector. The brown connector plugs into the gray plug, and the blue plugs right into the Zen module. So the new trucks, they've pinned these differently. They've added a key on here. So what we do, unfortunately, is you have to actually take your flush cuts and you can cut those two keys off very simply. They come off pretty easy, right? So now this plug will plug in right here and clip right in. And then you have your factory USB that all plugs in. You can basically sit these plugs right behind the amp rack. This one we're not going to need anymore, so that's all plugged in. And now we have these running down as well. You can either run these down with that, or you can also just tuck them around here and get them ran down, because these plug in to, we have these connectors down here, these 4 connectors, and they're labeled left mid, right tweeter, right mid, left tweeter. So we're going to be, this is our passenger side, which is our right side. So we have right tweeter and right mid-range. And those are going to usually have gray wires. So this one, it says RTWT, which is right tweeter, and that's going to plug into right tweeter. A right tweeter to right tweeter, right mid to right mid. You absolutely want to make sure that these are plugged in label for label, because if they're not, the system will not work properly. So then we haven't done it yet, but we're going to run our driver's side wires back here and plug those in, and then we also have the T-harness to work on. So we got these wires here, now we can go ahead and work on, this is kind of tricky because this needs to be slid down to line up exactly with that hole, and then we can push this in place. And go ahead and get that started, and go ahead and get this mounted. And now this is secure. They mount it in there. So now this is all mounted. We have our Zen hooked up, we have our power and ground hooked up behind, and now we have a couple more connections left for our driver's side of the vehicle. The reason why we leave the driver's side of the vehicle or working passenger to driver's side is now we have a couple more things to do. We have a harness. We have to run our base knob and install our base knob. We have some USB cables that you guys are not going to have to use, but they're there for service. And then we're going to have a T-harness in this particular vehicle to run to the front to get our rear speakers, which are powered off the radio. So we have 1, 2, 3 more connections back here, and then running our base knob to the front and installing that. All right, so now we're going to run the base knob to the front, which is here. We're going to run our pillar wires here and the T-harness for behind the radio to the front. So Nathan's going to go ahead and show you guys how that's done.
Okay guys, we're going to start with disassembly this whole side. So we have this panel here. This one comes off first here, the side panel, and this kick panel, and this panel. And we have the pillar out already. But yeah, so we've got, we're going to basically be running everything down this side just like we did on the passenger side. The only difference here is we will be having to go to the head unit. It's not as daunting as it looks. Everything's actually comes out through the top side, and then we have our base knob, of course, right here.
Yeah, so the base knob's going to go right next to the light switch, which we'll get some more light in here so you can see the light switch with the light.
Alright, so
all right, cool.
This, just like the rear panels, just comes right up.
Kind of like Legos.
Yeah, Legos. And these panels, the C pillar and kick panel, B pillar and kick panel, I like to remove this molding so that way I can get my hands behind here, and then just pry it And then there's a clip right here and a clip on the back side as well. Now this piece, you may need a panel tool to get this up. You can take this and just pry there on the corner, sides. And that can slip down out of the way. That just comes off. And it has a slit right here, so you can just run this right through it.
And then you can set that aside. Now you see we have a clear shot all the way to the back of the vehicle, all the way back there to the
Go ahead and put this back in because this is pretty sharp. Don't want to cut myself anymore. Then take this off, and this you can just grab with your hand there at the bottom. It comes right off.
I'll grab that.
And then here, kind of the same thing as the B-pillar. You have a clip down here in the bottom, and then it pulls straight towards the back of the vehicle. Then you kind of have to pull it back around to get around this latch here for the hood. Put that back.
Move that seat back. And you can position the light up here. Alright, so we repositioned here, got some lighting so we can see what's going on here. Got this all disassembled, and now we're going to go ahead and make these connections in the back and get all these cables ran to the front.
So I like to take my base knob and just kind of run it through, just set it there for now. The T-harness, it has this plug up front that you can disconnect, so that way you don't have to run this through the vehicle. So I'm just going to set that to the side. And the big plug right here, 18 pin, that's going to plug in right here at the amplifier rack. Alright, and we have our two cables here, so a left tweeter and a left mid. Left tweeter and left mid. Now we don't want to run the wires like this. We want to have some slack. You can kind of see we have some slack from the other side over there. So we want to make sure we have adequate amount of slack, so that way if the amp rack needs to come out, we don't have to take all of the wiring out as well. So we've got our tie wraps. We're going to go ahead and run this wire. We're going to, like we did the base knob, just go ahead and run it through.
You just basically drape the wires.
Doesn't have to look pretty, not yet at least.
Get everything.
And like I said before, just make sure you have some slack on those wires. Get the tie wrap started, and then you can get everything looking good where it needs to be. Position those back as well. We can come and make that look a little bit better later. go ahead and put another one here. This right here, you can literally just tuck this down under, and that will be right there following that factory harness. It's perfectly fine there. And I usually do another tie right here. And now we move to the front of the vehicle. So we have a big mess here. Let me just kind of straighten all of this out. And so we have these little plastic retainers almost. And I like to just run the wires through there. It's pretty simple, honestly. There's plenty of slack in there to be able to run a good amount of wires. Also, be careful with this connector here. It's like a phone jack cable. If you're trying to pull on it and it's snagged on something, that will break off and it will not stay in the base knob. So always keep that in mind.
You can always add a little bit of electrical tape around it too to protect it. Especially if you have to pull it back out of something. Tie wrap right here. Alright, so there is you'll see this right here. This is the cable for the hood latch, and all of our factory wiring is going under that and going up here, and that's exactly what we're going to do with our wiring. So I'm going to start with our pillar wires. And just get it under there. Pull it up.
you can kind of route your wires down around here, around this loop in the factory wiring. And then we're basically just going to go again through this wiring as well, and then we're going to be coming up through the side panel that we took out earlier. And I'm literally touching my fingers together right here. That's how we're going to be running these wires together.
You guys can kind of see light back down in there where he's going to bring that up through. Nathan, maybe you can put the light back there so they can see the see a hole.
Hold on this.
You guys can see there's like a, you can see there's light through there. You guys can see the wires and everything. So he's running them up back through there to bring them up.
All right,
Perfect.
so we got everything to this point, and this is kind of where everything's kind of split away from each other.
All right, so Nathan got the wires. We left, they're to this point. Now they're going to get split off and go to the appropriate spots.
So these are pillar wires, so they're obviously going to go up here. And then we have our base knob cable. It's going to go right here, as we said before. This wire is a little long, so we'll have to tie that up somewhere. But we'll go ahead and route this up, and basically it's going to be pretty simple. Just going to go straight up. I like to do it behind this foam or whatever, this like polyfill type stuff. Route it kind of through there like that. And then I like to put a couple zip ties up here. And I'll also zip tie the factory wiring. Also zip tie the factory wiring here. Tie that up there. Make sure these are pulled the same length. There. And cut that.
Awesome.
This, typically, you can kind of get your hand back here. I don't really like to put panel tools in there if I don't have to. And you can literally just push it back with your hand. And then it has a plug that's very similar to the amplifier plug back there. And so this right here, bass knob is going to go right there. We have a nice open spot right here.
Okay, so we got the panel. Nathan took the switch panel for the lights out, and you guys can see we have a blank spot to the right toward the steering wheel. And Nathan's going to show you how to install the bass knob.
So this pretty much just comes apart. I guess technically we don't really need to do that yet. This will come with the kit. It's going to be a template to drill out the hole for the bass knob.
Basically alignment.
Yeah, as you can see, it basically goes right up against it, and then you have the line to center it up. Just gonna go just like that. And we have some tape on it as well. So this tape you can just peel off. And line it up and stick it on. And so that's there, nice and centered. We take our unibit and put this fast mode, turbo mode. I'll just go ahead and take this off now, since we have our starting point. So we need to go, I think it's 6 steps in.
6 steps, yeah, 5/16 hole.
5/16. And this particular step bit measures out 5/16 right there.
So we got our template off, and you see there's a center hole.
So
And now Nathan's gonna slowly work his way to 5/16. Make sure you have the drill really crooked.
see how deep we are now. So we have 2 steps left. Should be it. Yep.
So removed this. This is a 10mm nut. Base knob will slide down in.
You gotta go put, there's a little circuit board on this side, and put that on the outside.
Toward the dash.
Just like that.
Put your washer, that, and get that tightened. Here, let's come over here. I'll grab a 10mm nut driver. You can use a normal socket. You go ahead and tighten that up, nice and snug. That way. You can turn the knob all the way down, and then perfect. And push it down.
At about 7 o'clock.
Yep, that's it. Perfect. Cool.
So now that this is done, we still need to get our cable there, which it's right here. So it's super simple right here.
Yeah, that runs
But
right through there.
what we want to do is, we don't want all of this slack. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and
Just wind it around your hand.
yep. And honestly, what you can probably do, just pull that plug out, zip tie it to that plug.
You can zip tie it to the factory harness for the light. Get that.
Put another little wrap in there. There we go.
Gonna run that out with the light. Get that all tie wrapped. Cool. Your flush cuts, flush cut it. Can pull all that back through. And then that just snaps back in place. Your base knob is installed. So base knob is in. Pillar wires are up here, and now we got to run This is the last part of it, running this to behind the radio. And then we can get all this put back together. Alright, so now we're here in the, gonna get behind this factory radio, and everything is, actually you don't have to take apart the whole dash, you just have to pull apart the top of the dash. So we got some microfiber cloths put down on the center console, and I guess Nathan has the appropriate tools to take this apart.
Yep, so 7mm on a ratchet, extension, and panel tool.
Cool.
So first thing is getting this out. And
Just took the rubber mat out.
bunch of clips on these.
You can see how he pries underneath there. The tool works really well. You don't want to pry up along this edge right here. You pried down here, that's all covered by a rubber mat, because this is very easy right up here to mess up with the pry tool.
So then we have a 7 here and a 7 here. You don't have to remove the center channel. You just remove
7
these.
there and there. So there's 2 7mm. Kind of like on the left and the right of the
So now this is unscrewed, but there's still plenty of clips going all the way around it. There's a slight lip that is underneath this trim right here. So what I typically do is very carefully, I just try and pop this trim out just a little, ever so slightly. See, that's already good, and you can kind of see that lip that's underneath that trim.
So you just released one of the clips on there and it,
And you
okay, perfect. So now you can get underneath that panel. This panel tool we send with the kits really does help. You have a lot of leverage built into the kit or the tool.
So you can see you have 4 clips on the back, and then all these clips going around the sides, and then you have your 2 mounting points there in the center. Here we have the plug for the center channel. Just simply disconnect it.
You set that aside.
Now we have this bracket right here. It has 4 number 7s in it, and all that's doing is kind of connecting the dash pieces together, and it's also mounted into this chassis right here. That's the actual ACM, audio control module, or radio. So we have to unmount this, and then we'll unmount the radio after that.
all of them.
So that's the bracket. Now, Sage, you want to look down in here? We've got 2 screws here, and then 2 screws on the other side as well.
So those are also 7mm bolts.
Yes, 4 7mm holding the head unit.
Okay.
And these are the plugs right here. Well, really, it's just one of them that we have to connect our T-harness in line with. Unfortunately, they have this AC vent right here, and we can't just disconnect it and plug it in. We have to actually remove the head unit to actually access that plug. So that's pretty far down there, so we have to have an extension. So this is the moment we need the extension. All right.
So we got a actually we're using a magnetic extension piece with a 7mm because those things are far down in there and easy to drop down inside of the dashboard.
We've had a million nights just like this. So let's get down to business. Mama, please don't worry about me. 'Cause I'm about to let my heart speak. My friends keep telling me to leave this. So let's get down to business. Let's get down to business. Give you one more night to get this. We've had a million nights just like this. So let's get down to business.
All right. So got the 7s out, and now he's pulling out the ACM. Kind of just set it on its side, right?
Yeah. You don't technically have to remove it if you don't want to. We're going to remove it in this instance.
Completely?
Yeah.
Okay.
So just
Black plug, gray plug.
all we care about is the black plug. This gray plug is just going to stay connected just like normal whenever we put the head unit back in. This is what our T-harness is going to connect to, is this black plug. That's what has all the speaker wires in it. Then we have the A to B that connects back there to the Zen. And then your standard AM, FM, and XM antennas.
All right, so now we have got the ACM out. We got a big hole in the dash, more room to work.
Yep, so now we just need to get our rear speaker wires that are connected to the amp rack back up here. Gotta get them from over here to over here. And there's a couple ways of going about it. I typically go through back this way. And there's a few brackets on the top of the dash that go above the steering column and above the braking assembly and everything that hold the wiring, the factory wiring up, so you can go above those. And then you can also route your wire under all of those components and go more towards this direction as well. And I believe we're gonna try and go this way today. Show you guys that.
Under?
Yeah, and I'll try and my best to show everything under the dash that I'm talking about. It's just very, very difficult to see up under there with the camera. Honestly, it's kind of difficult to see up under there in general anyway, so.
I can't hardly do it, I'm too big. You get stuck. I normally run a long snake across the top, out to the side of the dash and pull it across the top.
That is, if you have spare wire or anything like that, or a long zip tie, you can always do that.
We have a long zip tie. Okay, now we're gonna run we actually pulled that harness back from around the brake or the hood release cable. Right, Nathan?
Yep. So we did have it routed with these wires here. and you could do that, run it that way, but for this particular vehicle we're gonna run it under.
An easier way to run it for you guys.
So we're essentially going to run it directly under here and directly up. So
I guess what Nathan was saying is once you get it ran underneath this carpet here and you lay on your back and you look up, once you have this top of the dash off and you look up, you can actually see the windshield.
And it'll be right here in this corner.
Yeah, right there in the corner. You can actually see up through the dash and through the windshield, so you can just push that wire straight up through and out the top of the dash. Make it a lot easier. So I think there's a clip down there on the floor that just kind of turns off. It's a retainer clip for the carpet. It's going to remove that. Kind of twist off and then kind of a push on deal.
Yep, it's got threads on the, it's a stud right there in that
little piece that comes off. So then you can pull that carpet back. You don't really have to pull it all the way out. You can just kind of fish that cable.
You can get this tucked under here, and then you can kind of direct the cable down.
There's an area where the floor transitions for the cable to sit down into.
And you can see this cable right here. We're just going to tuck it right back in here. And behind this panel. And we're going to be going straight up through there. I don't know if you can see any light down there. A little bit. That's basically where we're going to be going up.
Oh. I'll get the camera here and see if I can see up through here where this cable is going to come up.
See it?
Yep. Yep. Pull it down a little bit. Yeah. Okay. Yep. I got it. So yeah, just basically that wasn't that bad. We just pushed it up through. This cable's kind of stiff because it has a Tech Flex on it and has this small connector on it. So I just pushed right up through here. So that's where we need it now, which is great. That's pretty simple to do. So we got that ran across there, and now it's sitting up here in the dash area. And now we can grab our, I guess that's our T-harness section that unplugs.
So like we said before, the black connector, not the gray connector. The gray won't even plug in. So plugs right in. This will plug into the head unit. And this connects right here. Now we do suggest.
So that's all done.
Zip tie. I do suggest just running a little zip tie around this connector, just to make sure it never disconnects accidentally.
So what that does is it holds the clip down. So you have to do it kind of toward the front. If you do it on the back, it'll actually open the clip and it'll come right off. But
yep.
Yeah, puts a tie wrap around it to keep it secure. Good. Now we can get these cables plugged back in.
Yeah, you're good.
sufficient room up in there. It's not super tight, which is great. Get that kind of.
And there's alignment pins.
So there's alignment pins on the radio, so that kind of self-aligns in. So then you can get that. At this point, from this step, you pretty much have, except we need to get this pillar in. I would always recommend, before putting all this back together and all that stuff, I would highly recommend getting the system on before putting that back together, just to make sure that you have everything plugged in properly. You don't want to put all this back together and find out your rear speakers aren't working and you accidentally plugged in the black plug to the gray plug or something weird like that. So at this point, before putting any of the bolts back in here, I would recommend getting the system playing at this point. At this point, you can go ahead and get your tweeters in, or your three-way pillars in on each side. You guys can see this one's in. We just have to bolt the handle in. That side, we're going to install that. We got our bass knob installed. We got everything's done really. At this point, we would connect the power ground to the battery, and the system should turn on and work. All right, so we got everything's working.
She say that I'm cool.
Yeah, everything's working. We're good. We got sound. The system sounds amazing. All four corners are working, subs working, bass knobs working. Everything is good to go. So now, once we verified that everything works, now I'm comfortable putting the whole truck back together. So we'll put all the bolts back here in the center. We'll go ahead and get the side of the dash, running boards, and then we'll move back to get the back pillars installed on both sides, and that's it. It'll be a wrap. All right, we got sound, everything works. Now we can put the truck back together. So you guys saw we got everything plugged into the ACM, aka the radio, and now we're gonna go ahead and get all these put back in. We have a magnetic tool because, yes, if you don't, it will fall into the dashboard. No fun. So basically,
I'm just gonna get them started first.
Get them started first. Remember, that thing has alignment pins, so it kind of aligns itself. But he's gonna go ahead and just get them started, and we'll just. It's a total of 8. Actually, it's a total of 10 7mm bolts, right?
Let's get down to business. Give you one more night to get this. We've had a million nights just like this. So let's get down to business. Back and forth with the bullshit. I know I said it before, I don't mean it. It's been a while since I had your attention, so it might hurt to hit it. Dreams we had don't ever fall away. We can't leave them if we stay the same. And I can't do this for another day. So let's get down to business. Let's get down to business. Give you one more night to get this. We've had a million nights just like this. So let's get down to business. Let's get down to business. Give you one more.
Next panel in. You can plug your center channel in. In this particular kit, it's not being used, but it can be plugged in.
And this can go ahead and clip back in.
You put those 7mm in already?
Got them now.
2 more 7mm.
2 more.
And those are different. Those are black in color. They're not machine thread like the others.
Got this. We've had a million nights just like this. So let's get down to business.
And then once those 7s are in, now you just clip the center channel grill back in place. Clip, 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 clip. And then the last thing is the rubber mat goes, sits down in there. And that's it, you're done. Super simple, right?
Yep.
It's not hard, it's just a lot of bolts, time consuming, so. Alright, so we got the radio back all together, and now we're going to get all this. That's pretty cool. Look.
Oh wow. Huh.
Stop flashing, man. Alright, so we're going to get the side of the dash on, kick panel, runner board plates, and the B-pillar. So B-pillar on first because kind of what needs to go on first. We'll do the B-pillar. Goes on just like it came off. That slides through. You're going to pull the technical word for this is wing lace.
Wing lace?
Yeah, wing lace. So
There's a alignment pin down here that you kind of have to line up first, and kind of right there.
alignment pin.
Yep.
That's first. Seat belt out of the way. That all just clips back in place. This, there's a clip that clips back in place. All this is clipped back in place. This goes down from the top, down, bam, bam. That just slides down and clips back in place. Then you can put your pinch rail molding, wing lace, whatever you want to call it. That's all on, and now, so that lines up to that. This lines up right here. There we
Needs
go.
a little love tap.
Yeah, just a little love tap, and then that clip goes down there. Everything's in. Then we can get this back in place. There we go. Yeah, I just need that clip wasn't pushing in really easily.
And these panels are pretty durable.
Yeah, so actually I got this back in. It's easier to put this in first, right?
Yep.
Just literally just clips in place. Super simple. It's all back in. And then you can get this all back in there. Just make sure it's pushed in place everywhere. Everything's good. And then our last piece will, this just lines up, and just clips in place. Simple.
Clip.
Oh, yeah, there's a clip too. We took this out to run the wire. There's a stud sticking out of the floor. Just put that over the stud and just push it down in place, and that's it. That's all done. Super simple. Okay, so now we're gonna get the C-pillar.
C-pillar.
Got A, and that's where the pillar, the mid and tweeter is, and then center one's B, and this is C. So I'm gonna get that in place.
So retainer clip. Already got it in, but you know.
Same way you took it out.
Same way you took it out.
Twist one way and then twist the other way and it lines up.
Seat belt.
Go ahead and get your seat belt through.
Definitely don't want to put the pillar on before you do that.
Get this pulled out.
So once you get it set in there, it kind of just goes.
You just have to make sure all the clips are lined up.
Right. The main thing you want to look for is down here. You want to make sure that this clip right here.
You want to show them with the camera, maybe?
Let's see. Kind of see down in here, this clip right here. Want to make sure that goes in place, and then you can kind of work your way. You have a couple clips here as well, and then pretty much just goes right in place.
You don't really have to use any force to get that in there. It'll just kind of fall in place and pop right in.
And down here you have a clip right there. Sometimes you have to force it this way, and it'll go right in. And then weather stripping.
And that's it.
And this
Get
little
all
side
that
panel.
put, and then this little side panel will just pop right in place, right down here.
And all these panels, they have a LH or RH on them, signifying which side they're for. So
That's it. Just pops right on. And then that's going to end up bolting to the side of the, right back to the side of the chair. We have one more thing to put back.
Yep.
Here is, you want to
zip tie that.
So we're gonna zip tie these to the factory wire. Then we also have to get these zip tied so they stay here, and then we got to put this air duct piece back in. This is basically taking, I guess, hot air from the underneath the seat and just routing it out to the side, or maybe it's taking in fresh air, I'm not sure yet. Add some tie wraps to that. You got that piece, the duct.
Oh yeah, where's
the
that?
top of the toolbox, the gray box.
Yep, this can just go just like this.
It's gonna go underneath there.
Yeah. Literally just clips in place like that. And then get all that done, and then now this, we're not going to latch it in completely yet, but you guys can see that's done. We'll come over here. I'm going to repeat the same process on this side of the chair with this pillar. Same process over here. You got that alignment clip off of that panel? No.
Here, let's talk about that real quick. So this does have, there's this alignment pin for, I guess, I don't know why it's there, it's an alignment, but technically we normally remove this You can use those cutters. I don't know if I can do it with one hand. You can remove that, pop that off. Now you can actually get this back in the vehicle without taking the back seat out.
And it just saves the plastic from getting gouged up and everything.
Yeah, so I would just remove that. Unless you want to not remove that and take your back seat out. Nathan's gonna pop that seat belt through there. See if we can get a better shot of the clip. So it goes in that way, then turns, and then comes through. So it's super simple. Same thing is gonna get it slid in place at the bottom. Get that one clip down at the bottom.
This one up here is a pain sometimes. Doesn't want to line up very well. So you just got to make sure that that's lined up before you, because that will break that the thing holding the clip. It will break, so you just got to make sure it's lined up before you push it in there.
All that's in place.
Is in place. And then clip at the bottom.
So we got that all in. Got that all on good. And then we can get that seat belt. We need a 13 millimeter. Gonna need a 13 millimeter. This bolts into the side of the seat frame. So you just grab a 13 millimeter. We're gonna use a 13 on an impact gun. You can use a ratchet. It does have a retainer clip, so that's gonna keep that together.
And this will just line
There's an
up.
alignment pin.
Yep.
In the side of the chair for that. Let's see if I can
It is
get a view of that.
this. If I can hold it. It's this this bottom hole right here is where that alignment pin goes in.
That's it. It's installed. And then we're just gonna put that last piece on, and the whole truck's back together. As you can see, we got everything all back together. The whole system's done. It just clips. Legos. That's what I always say, Legos. So we got everything installed for you guys. Get out of the car. So you guys can see all this is together. Actually, yep. Let's get this. We gotta get this one last. So that's together. Now we'll just align our latch pin. We can get our seat latched, and now our seat flips up. There's a little bit of pressure on the chair because of the enclosure, but it still does flip up. It does press on the enclosure a little bit when you flip the seats up, but it's not going to damage anything. And you still have full functionality, obviously, here of the vehicle. So that's a wrap. That's the full stealth system. We covered power wire base knob behind the radio, and cutting and installing the rear carpet panel, enclosure, amp rack, the whole 9 yards. So hope this was informative. All right, so let's go ahead and talk about the using this system and how all of this stuff functions. Here right now we're in CarPlay mode. We're using Apple Music. All of our systems are usually tuned with Apple Music. That's what we use. A lot of people use it. So you have sound settings, right? So we have tone controls. Recommend those all flat. You can tweak them up and down a little bit if you like. Need a little more treble, a little less mid-range, so on and so on. We do not recommend boosting them all the way up. If you're a low-level listener, you can bring these up a lot higher if you must. So, but normally we have these all set to flat. I just went into the wrong thing. Balance and fader. Balance works. Fader on the Evo, the Stealth 9-channel Evo, 7-channel Evo, and all the Stealth systems, the fader does not work anymore. We're only grabbing signal from the front, so you do not have fader anymore. That hasn't been much of a complaint because the system is set up to be very balanced. This speed compensated volume will still work. In this truck it's off. Stereo or surround mode. You want to make sure it's off of surround mode. Make sure it's on stereo mode. The surround mode does not work anymore. If you put it on surround mode, the sound will shift all the way to the right side and sound real weird. So make sure it's on stereo mode. And then as far as volume, you know this thing goes 0 is minimum, 30 is maximum. You can use the whole volume range of the system. You do not have to. 15 is not max volume. 15 is halfway. You're going to get the greatest amount of increase in sound from 15 to 30. You're not going to get a huge increase in sound from 0 to 15. Once you pass 15, you know, the last 25% of the volume control is going to be your biggest volume swing. That's when it's going to get really, really, really loud fast. So don't be afraid to turn your volume up if you want to jam out. If you're at normal level listening, I normally ride around with my system 15-ish, 16-ish is a normal listening level. That might be loud for some people, but that's what I like. And if I want to jam, go ahead and turn it up. Don't be afraid to turn it up. Another thing here is your sub-level control, which is mounted. You mounted it here next to the light switch. This can be turned all the way up. Don't be afraid to use the knobs. So yeah, that's a basic rundown. Everything works as